are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast. I'm able to take on Twitter. Here today in the latest Auburn athletics news, as we got a couple of headlines to cover. Of course, fall camp still going on. It is currently August 12th as this episode is coming out, which means we are 17 days away from Auburn football, either blessing our TV screens or cursing our TV screens with their presence. Now, of course, the only real headline we got to talk about today is the AP poll coming out. And, of course, Auburn not ranked, which no shocker there. Auburn comes in at the 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37th in the AP poll, and will take on number 28, Baylor, in the season opener on Friday, August 29th at 7 p.m. Of course, no one expected Auburn to be in the top 25 according to the season start. I think some people had Auburn ranked, and there's some polls out there that have Auburn ranked a little higher than that. I will say, looking at the coaches poll, Auburn is around the 34 spot. So, yeah, I mean, people are ranking Auburn in some instances. But, again, I don't think Auburn has done anything to earn that spot quite yet. A win versus Baylor, conversation can be had. But I think you're looking at least a 4-0 start before Auburn even sniffs that top 25 ranking. But today, what I will talk about today is there's been a lot of big-time players stepping up during fall camp. And what I want to do today is name my 5 Auburn players who I think could be household names in 2025. Now, again, some of these players I've mentioned before. And, of course, I think number 1 is pretty obvious if you've listened to the show before. But I want to start off with some freshmen, or with a freshman, in 4-star/5-star defensive tackle Jordan Crawford. Now, Jordan Crawford, coming out of Parker, was a big-time landing in the Auburn recruiting trail for the 2025 recruiting class. But Jordan Crawford, ever since he stepped foot on the Plains, he has been an absolute menace, both as a nose tackle and as just a pass rusher in general. He has been lighting it up. And, of course, I think he's already kind of working his way to being a household name. But I wouldn't say he's on the same level as like a Malik Autry right now. In terms of those freshman guys. But I think he definitely is going to get to that spot. Now, some of these guys on this list, I could have put a lot of defensive linemen on this. Bobby Travis, I think he has been on the team long enough to be a household name, so I kept myself from doing that. And I think Malik Blockton also has earned a spot. But I think Jordan Crawford can definitely make a name for himself right away. Him, Malik Autry, both are just too dang talented to be kept off the field in 2025. So I want to start this list giving him some love, because I feel like I've done given a lot of love to Malik Autry. I don't think I've given enough to Jordan Crawford. So I wanted to start him off with this list. Now, number 4, I have Preston Howard, the tight end out of Maryland. Now, Auburn has done a good job in the past couple of seasons of introducing the tight ends to the offense. Rivaldo Fairweather had a brilliant 2 years with the Auburn Tigers, if you ask me. Brandon Frazier, I don't think, is the pass-catching threat that Preston Howard can be. I think Preston Howard can add another element to this offense that isn't being talked about nearly enough. Of course, the wide receiver room is going to be the talk of the town, and the quarterbacks, of course, are going to be the giant focal point of what fans want to see do well this season. Running backs, same thing with them. Offensive line, it also goes to them as well. But no one's talking about tight ends enough. And I think Auburn has done a good job of recruiting tight ends, both through the portal over the past few years under Hugh Freeze, and this past offseason, you pick up 2 tight ends. One of them is suspended currently, but Ryan Gee is a very solid tight end that's going to get his name called on a few times this season. But Preston Howard is a name that I think, it isn't being talked about a lot, strictly because of, Brandon Frazier's been here for 17 years now. Preston Howard, being a more of a pass-catching threat, kind of should get talked about a lot, because Cam Coleman's going to ask for double teams. Eric Singleton is going to – these wide receivers are going to get game plans from the defense after them. But the tight end room, it hasn't been talked about enough. And Preston Howard is a guy who you can line up out wide. You can put in the slot and be one of those emergency targets that Jackson Arnold needs. He has – we've seen from the practice notes, he has been – capable or has been known to throw the check down ball. Preston Howard can be that for Auburn, and that's not a bad thing to have. throwing checkdowns is not something to knock a quarterback for doing. If anything, you should be praising a quarterback for being willing to take the check down. Not every single time, but whenever Auburn has had an issue over the past few years, and this goes even back into the Gus Malzahn era, checkdowns were not something that was being picked on. The quarterbacks, regardless of the coaching staff that was in charge, quarterbacks were just making throws down the field, forcing passes to certain targets, and ultimately throwing interceptions and not making plays whenever they should be making plays. I think Preston Howard can be that playmaker, check down guy that Auburn needs this season. And of course, I think he can do even more down the field. I think he is a true pass catching tight end. And I think he's going to have a good season for Auburn. I think he's going to be the receiving yards leader in this tight end room because I think Brendan Frazier, very solid blocking tight end, but I think he leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to catching the ball. But after the catch, there we go. Now, number 3, I'm going to go back to the rookies here, the freshmen. Omar Mapson has been the talk of fall camp thus far. Now, this spring, he reclassified. He's supposed to be a class 2026 guy, but now he's a class 25 guy. Omar Mapson has been doing some damage this camp. And that's something I love to see, especially out of a guy who is so young. And it's funny, I made this joke on the Auburn Addicts, where, Auburn fans got sick and tired of hearing about the 17-year-old wide receiver on the other side of the state. They would love to have a guy who is that age running the ball and doing some dangerous things with the football. I think Omar Mapson, he does everything with the football that you want. He's a power back. He's an agile back. He is quick on his feet. Something I would say, look, I love Damari Alston, love Jeremiah Cobb, love Darrell Robinson and Alvin Henderson. But the running back room, I don't think is as set in stone as the other positions around it. I think with the running back by committee, it's a week by week basis of who is going to get the bulk of the carries. And with Omar Mapson, stepping in the limelight and just popping off, it's hard to believe that he couldn't be that for Auburn this year. And with Auburn having 3 backs already, what's the fourth? But whatever one guy is hot, you're going to keep giving him the football. And if Omar Mapson continues to pop off all spring, it only takes one bad day for any other back for a guy who's currently on a hot streak for him just to jump that spot. And, I honestly think Omar Mapson could be that. He has been doing that thus far. And, I definitely think he is a name to talk about here in terms of guys who could, step out in that week 1 and absolutely ball out on the field. So, yeah, I'm super stoked to see what more we can get from Omar Mapson going forward. But, yeah, I definitely think he is a guy that could push for that starting spot, or even just getting the RB2 spot would be enough. So, number 2 on my list, I have Rashawn Pleasant, a guy who I think has been talked about by the media more so than the fans. So, Rashawn Pleasant was a transfer defensive back out of Tulane, had a great year last year, especially being a returner. And I think that's something he can make his name known for. Auburn has not had a special team touchdown last year off a blocked punt, but hasn't had one since Noah Igbenogany in terms of a returner making a play with the ball. I think Rashawn Pleasant can be that. He has shown the speed and the agility to get the ball down the field on those returns. And I think you're going to see more of him as the kick returner, less so than the punt returner. I think with that, you're going to see more of Malcolm Simmons and Eric Singleton, and even maybe even Cameron King. Not Cameron King, Will Upton, just to get those guys to just catch the ball. But Rashawn Pleasant, I think, also makes a lot of noise at the defensive back position. And, after you get Kyan Lee and Jay Crawford, you look at Rayon Strader, and that's your obvious cornerback 3. But the cornerback 4 spot, is a battle. It's a Rashawn Pleasant versus Blake Woodby and a couple of other freshmen. But Rashawn Pleasant's been making some plays. And I think if all it takes is one big return out of him, and everyone knows who Rashawn Pleasant is. And I think he can do that. And it's something Auburn has been it's been so rare for Auburn to have a good returner. And again, it's been since Noah Egbenogany, and that was like 2019, and that's just been forever since that happened. Maybe 2020. It's somewhere. It was a while ago. Last time Auburn was able to return a kick or a punt for a touchdown. But I think Rashawn Pleasant can do that. I think he showed a lot of that, the threat of being a playmaker at Tulane. I think that translates very well because Tulane's a very good football program. So I think that translates very well to Auburn and to the SEC as well. So yeah, I'm super stoked to see Rashawn Pleasant and see what he can do with the football in his hands in 2025. Lastly on my list, and my voice cracked a little bit. If you've listened to the show before, you know there's been one guy this season that I've been super stoked to see on the field, and that has been Wake Forest transfer Horatio Fields. Now, again, he's gotten some media attention, just a little bit, but I don't think it's been enough. I'm looking at this wide receiver room, right? I'm looking at Cam Coleman. I'm looking at Eric Singleton. I'm looking at Perry Thompson, who is going to have a breakout year. Those guys are household names already. Bryce Kane, I think, could also be a household name going in this year. Malcolm Simmons is a household name already. Horatio Fields has not been talked about nearly enough for what he can be for this Auburn football team. And you look at last year, and some of the big issues Auburn had was converting on third down, making big-time plays when their backs are against the wall, not getting stuck behind the sticks and being able to get a play down the field. And drops were an issue early on in the year, but not so much later on. Horatio Fields completely negates those problems because of what he offers in his skill set. He is a for sure catcher of the football. I have said this on several occasions. I think Horatio Fields has the best hands on the football team. And that doesn't mean, he's going to go up and snag a ball with one hand and be in a SportsCenter top 10. I mean, whenever you need a guy to run a 5-yard out route or run a slant up the middle and get the ball down the field for 6 yards, that's your guy. He's not your flashy kind of guy. He is going to make the big-time plays in the simplest way possible. That's the best part. I'd like a guy who can perfectly run a little out route and get open and just if the ball's in his vicinity, he's able to bring it in with two hands and secure it and get the much needed yards. That was all. Again, if you go look up a highlight film of Wake Forest last year in Horatio Fields, that's what he was doing. He was catching those balls. And a 3rd and 5, I don't need Auburn to throw a 50-50 ball. I need Auburn to throw a for sure, this is going to get a first down here. And what Horatio Fields does, he does that. And again, I said this whenever I predicted Auburn stat leaders. I predicted Cam Coleman to be the receiving yards leader. I predicted Horatio Fields to be the touchdown leader because I think whenever Auburn gets into that red zone and then in the goal territory, you're looking at those guys who are going to catch the football, and that's Horatio Fields. I was super stoked on just the name value alone of Horatio Fields. And then I started watching his game. I absolutely love everything about a guy who can catch the football and get yardage. Something Auburn has not been able to do consistently in a while. And I think Auburn has completely revamped a wide receiver room under Hugh Freeze. I think every single year it's gotten way better. I think Horatio Fields adds an extra level that I don't think is getting talked about enough. And I think whenever he catches a couple of touchdowns in a game, people are going to understand that Horatio Fields has potential to be one of the biggest names in this wide receiver room by season's end. And I think you're going to get a lot of him early and often because Auburn finds a way to get stuck in those 3rd and 5s, those 2nd and 7s, and unable to get the yardage needed. Even like a 4th and I would say like a 4th and 3. You want to run the football, but you don't have a Jarquez Hunter in the backfield right now. You have to earn those accolades to be able to prove that you can get those 3 yards, 4 yards to carry. Horatio Fields dude might have like 50 catches and average like 5 yards a catch. And that's fine. That's getting the ball consistently and getting consistent yards, and that is what I want to see. You also love to get those guys who are averaging 11 yards a catch. You love that. but you got to be able to get first downs in this league. So Auburn has been unable to do for years now. So yeah, I'm super stoked for Ratio Fields. Again, I've probably been one of the biggest Ratio fans this offseason because I just love that he is a for sure catcher of the football. That's what I want to see from an Auburn wide receiver, is someone who I can trust to catch the football 90% of the time. I'll give him 90. But yeah, that's going to do it for that. Let me know who you think I missed on this list. Do you think I should have added a special teamer on this list? Offensive lineman. Who did I miss on this list? Let me know who you think is going to be a for sure household name in the year 2025. Let me know in the comment section below. We're going to quick little break. Outside this break, we're going to continue on. We're going to do a little twofer on the Way Too Early season preview series, talking about Vanderbilt and Mercer. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you tired of having to rummage through just clothes after clothes after clothes, looking for something to wear? Are you tired of your friends making fun of you for your terrible fashion sense? Well, do we have the shirt for you? Go to thewarreport.com, get your laptop out and do it right now. Go to the shop and get your very own Feelin' Loopy t-shirt as well as your college loop hat, and you can get both of them for only $25 each. Plus shipping and handling, of course. But with that, now back to your regular scheduled program.
And of course, you can get those on thewarreport.com. Go to the shop and get your very own college loop merch today. Of course, it's on the War Report channel. Of course, the best way you support the channel is, of course, by liking the video, by commenting, letting me know who is your pick for who is going to be a household name for the Auburn Tigers in 2025. And of course, that's subscribing to the YouTube channel, getting us to that 1,000 subscriber mark before the start of the season. We are only 50 subscribers away from hitting that milestone. It'd be super cool to reach that before football starts. But of course, that's up to y'all. But as we continue on with the season preview series, I want to do a little bit of a twofer, just because I think Mercer, just to get it out of the way. I don't think it's something we really need to go too far in depth about when it comes to Mercer. We'll do that whenever we get to that part of the season. But I do want to spend this time to talk about Vanderbilt, who is up next on the season preview series. Of course, Auburn has a bye week in between these two games. Vanderbilt is going to be an interesting game going into this season because, again, this is a team Auburn lost to last year 17-7. It was a defensive masterclass from DJ Durkin and an offensive just shudder from Hugh Freeze and company. Auburn was able to hold Vanderbilt to their lowest point total of the season, or tied for it at least, up until the next week whenever South Carolina held them to 7. So, and again, it's a rare occurrence to talk about Vanderbilt scoring 17 or less last year. They were a very prolific offense. But Diego Pavia also has been a known kryptonite for Hugh Freeze over the past few years, going 0-3 against Pavia over the past those years. I think that turns around this year. I'm not high on Vanderbilt. And, sue me if I'm wrong. Vanderbilt has shown no proof of being consistent. Pavia, sued the NCAA, got an 18th year of eligibility. And, I think he's oddly enough, it's funny to say this, Vanderbilt has become a very unliked team in the SEC this year because of Pavia. And that's something funny to say, that Vanderbilt's seen as a bad guy, that they're not very good. So I don't really know what to even compare that to. I can't even think of a disliked team that isn't good. That doesn't compute because, you think of a Miami, they're hated, but they're not always bad. They're typically ranked, or even a USC or Michigan or Ohio. All those hateable teams are all the good ones. I can't even think of it. UCF, consistently okay. But Vanderbilt, I like Clark Lee a lot. I like him as a coach. I think he's a great defensive mind. But, dude, Pavia just won't shut up. And it makes it so easy to root against Vanderbilt this year. But, looking at their roster, I think they lost a lot of talent, both to the draft and to the portal in general. You bring back Eli Stowers, that's a massive threat to any defense is Eli Stowers. But Vanderbilt, I just don't think they have the manpower to replicate what we saw last year from them. It was such a major season and historical season for Vanderbilt, and they got so hyped up about the 7-win season, and I just don't think enough was done in the offseason to even match that going into this year. I think Vanderbilt's going to be probably the 13th or 14th team in the SEC this year. I like Auburn a lot in this game, strictly because I like the talent distribution. Auburn should have won this game last year. It was a matter of incapability on the offensive front to win this game last year. Auburn's defense gave them every opportunity to put up points and take a lead and keep it, but they were unable to do so. I think that's changed this year. I think this roster is completely different. I like Auburn a lot in this game. And again, I'm not on the Vanderbilt bandwagon. I'm not. They're playing in Auburn North Campus and Nashville. Nothing about Vanderbilt is speaking to me enough. I think Elias Towers, again, is going to be a massive Auburn's got the scheme a lot for Elias Towers. I think DeMarcus Riddick, I think Caleb Wheatland, I think all those linebackers are going to be in charge of keeping Towers in check. If he's in check, I don't see Vanderbilt doing a lot offensively this game. I think Auburn's going to have answers for Pavia. They had answers last year for him. I think Auburn can win this football game. And then going even to the next week, after the bye week, most so, Auburn's not going to lose to Mercer. I didn't want to do a full episode regarding this game. Auburn's not losing to Mercer. So, yeah, I'm just going to go on with that. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think Auburn is going to beat Vanderbilt this year? Are you high on Vanderbilt this year? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. But, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on Mercer. It's simple as Auburn's not losing to the Mercer Bears. Cut dry, it's not going to happen. So I'm not going to do a full detailed analysis on this game. It's not going to happen. But yeah, the Vanderbilt game, again, very interesting game. Once you get past Georgia, this season becomes a lot more favorable for Auburn, but also because a lot more interesting to talk about. Because, Missouri could be very good this season. No one really knows what to expect from Missouri this season. Arkansas the same way. I think I'm not expecting a whole lot from Arkansas, but I definitely think they're a team to watch out for. I think they're one of those teams over there. They're not very good, but they are prone to an upset or so throughout the year. And then Vanderbilt, I'm just not high on them this year, but they could easily shut me up and beat Alabama again. I would not be opposed to that. I'd like Vanderbilt to go 1-11 this year, beating Alabama, of course. But I'm not high on them. I don't think they're going to reciprocate what we saw from last year. But let me know in the comment section below. That's going to do it for this time with College Loop Podcast. Of course, I'm Dylan able to take on Twitter. Find me on Instagram as well at Dylan DYLNLRCK. Of course, you find me on TikTok as well at your boy the Tank as well at YABOY the Tank. You get me right here on the College Loop, where you should like, comment, subscribe. Let me know who you think is going to be a household name for the Auburn Tigers in 2025. So comment that down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. 50 subscribers away from hitting that 1,000 mark. Be super cool to reach that milestone before football season begins. Of course, don't forget to check us out on the audio version of the show as well on Spotify, Podcast, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. Also got us on social media, every single one of them. You can check us out over there at the College Loop. Now, with that being said, thanks for tuning in to the College Loop Podcast. Yet again, my throat is on fire right now. So with that being said, thanks for tuning in to the College Loop Podcast. And as always, War Eagle.